I'd like to call the Tuesday, July 5th, 2016 Papillion City Council meeting to order. Mrs. Butler, would you please take the roll?
Florence. Here. Mumgard. Here. Gaines. Here. Glover. Here. Jaworski. Here. Klug. Here. Stubbe. Here. Ingberg.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. Current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in the back of the council chambers. We have no presentations tonight. Mr. Hoynes, Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Begin my report this evening, council members, by reminding you several weeks ago you approved a process to hire a construction manager for the proposed community center. We solicited letters of interest, received 9 letters of interest. 6 of the 9 provided the information that was required by the original request, and they'll be asked to submit a formal RFP to work on the project. They'll be notified this week. We anticipate having a recommendation back to you, the full council, by September to keep that project on task. Also attendant to that particular project, much of our focus early on has been on the Lincoln Street improvements, if you're aware of that. Mayor Black has referred the initial concept to be reviewed by the Public Works Committee, I think 2 weeks from tonight, looking at that original design. If the council, whatever council input we get from that, we will then move forward with a informational session for the neighborhood there, because certainly that improvement's going to impact what they do. Even though it's not required by law, we have decided administratively that we would do notifications to people that live within 300 feet of that. So if you get any questions about why one got one or one didn't, we're just trying to parrot other requirements that if we would have been required. But certainly anybody can go to the meeting, just those that will receive invitations. I've had discussions with a handful of you on the final stages of the staff work on the budget. Anticipate that early to middle of next week, we will have the written document out to you electronically. I know at least 1 or 2 of you have asked for the hard copy. We'll also prepare that for you. And so if you do want a hard copy, let Nancy know this week, because her and I and Chris are just finishing that up this week. Finally, there was one question actually by a council member that I was somewhat remiss in not advising the council. The parkland at the villas at Creekside, if you think about, would be east, correct, of the Papillion Bay 4 baseball field, was originally designed as 15-acre park in 2005. Very long process. FEMA revised maps. SID went bankrupt. The city now, Director Gowan, myself, and some others, Lori Hanson, been looking, Tim Moran, for substitute practice space for soccer fields during a construction next year of the community center. And through that process, we have reached a tentative agreement. American National Bank currently owns that property, or technically owns it. Carl is working with their council. We're working to get a proposal to you folks here in the next 30 days for the city to formally acquire that property. But in the interim, the city's actually doing some grading, because we need to get in there in August and put some turf in there so that we can use that as alternate practice space when we lose the practice space out on the community center. If you have any questions or concerns, I know a council member in particular drove by and said, hey, what's going in there? Well, the only thing that can go in there, because it's in a floodplain. But again, my apologies if we didn't get that forward, but there's been a lot of moving pieces on the legal issues with that, Carla. That'd be correct, to make sure all the paperwork's in place, and the city's going to have that as parkland. And you can make a long-term decision for that at some point in the future, the infrastructure and such, but we really do need to get in there now, and that's why you see that going on. That concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Councilman Florence. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item E1, Ordinance 1744, An ordinance to approve the change of zone of certain real property within the zoning jurisdiction of the city of Papillion, Sarpy County, Nebraska, legally described as a tract of land located in part of the south half of the northeast quarter of Section 29 and together with Lincoln Road right-of-way located in part of the southeast quarter of said Section 29, both located in Township 14 North, Range 12 east of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located on the northeast corner of 114th Street and Lincoln Road from agricultural AG to single-family residential medium-density R2, to amend the official zoning map of the city of Papillion by changing the zoning district boundaries of the zoning map in accordance with Section 20532 of the Papillion Municipal Code and to provide for an effective date. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Close the public hearing. Item F1, Resolution R16-0090. This is a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a preliminary plat for the property legally described as a tract of land located in part of the south half of the northeast quarter of Section 29 and together with Lincoln Road right-of-way located in part of the southeast quarter of said Section 29, both located in Township 14 North, Range 12 east of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located on the northeast corner of 114th Street and Lincoln Road. The applicant is BHI Development. This is Granite Falls North. Public hearing, and I'll open the public hearing. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R16-0090? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F2, Ordinance 1739. An ordinance to amend the budget statement to be termed the Annual Appropriation Bill, which was adopted on November 17, 2015, by Ordinance Number 1725 to appropriate sums for necessary expenses and liabilities and to provide for an effective date. This is an amendment to the 2015-2016 budget. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1739? Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Any discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F3, Ordinance 1741. An ordinance imposing an additional City of Papillion sales and use tax at the rate of 0.5%, increasing the total city sales and use tax rate from 0.5% to 2%, to approve related actions and to provide for severability and the effective date hereof. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1741? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Glover. Any discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F4, related item, Ordinance 1742. An ordinance to amend in its entirety Chapter 175, Article 2, Section 20 of the Papillion Municipal Code, having to do with sales and use tax, to adopt and recognize the increase of the city sales and use tax from 1.5% to 2%, and to provide for severability and an effective date. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1742? Motion by Councilwoman Klug. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F5, Resolution R16-0076, a resolution to approve an interlocal agreement with Metropolitan Utilities District, MUD, to provide potable water services and facilities and to define the present and future boundaries of potable water service areas. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R16-0076? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Klug. Mr. Jaworski. Oh, Mr. Stubbe.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a couple comments. One is I plan to support this for a number of reasons. And I think if you look back at the water system master plan update that was done last year, there was a couple of recommendations that came from that report. And what we're doing tonight was one of the recommendations that came from that report. And I think there's a couple important reasons that entering into this agreement. One is that we know that MUD is kind of on our outskirts, and I think it establishes the ability for us to not dispute potential issues that might come up with both parties, and I think it it also allows us to eliminate potentially any stranded costs that both utilities might have because of this. The other thing is that with the 4 connections that are identified in this, those are important also from a couple reasons. One is that I think it provides the city some potential redundancy, so if there is any issues that might be experienced with the system that the city currently owns and maintains, is that it gives us that redundancy. The other thing is that there is a potential for future supply, and if you look at our system debt, which is about $15 million, there's also potential recommendations to expand our system at the tune of maybe about $16 million. And so looking at expanding the plant potentially could be deferred into future years by having the ability to have these potential connections that can provide us some additional water at some time in the future when and if we need it. So again, I plan to support this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Jaworski.
Yeah, I'd like to just say I'm going to have to abstain from this because I am an employee at MUD, but I also kind of echo what Mr. Stubbe said. I think this is a great deal for both parties, and if I could support it, I would support it. I mean, I do support it, but if I could vote for it, I would vote for it. But
we'll jump to the abstention in a second. I'm going to call for proponents and opponents, and we'll come and do that. Do we have proponents? I do want to recognize Dave DeBoer from MUD is here if there's questions. Do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Let's handle the abstention first. That does require a vote. It doesn't require a second, but we do need to vote on Mr. Jaworski abstaining. Ready for that? Go ahead and please vote. Yes would be allowing him to abstain. And I think you can vote for it.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
All right. So we will recognize that you will be abstaining. Council discussion. Any other discussion? If not, please vote. Can you hit your abstention button?
7 yeas, 0 nays. Jaworski abstains.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. DeBoer. Item F6, Resolution R16-0092, a resolution to approve a consulting agreement with Center for Municipal Solutions for consulting services concerning wireless communication towers. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R16-0092? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilwoman Klug. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Mr. Stubbe.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, Mayor, what got us to this point, and a couple other things. One is this only looking at potential private property where somebody wants to come and site a tower, or is it also looking at potentially city facilities that might have that potential for somebody siting a tower?
I'll start it and then I'll turn it to Mr. Hoynes. Cell tower work is very, very technical and very specific, and there's a nationwide movement, I believe, where some in the cell industry are believing they're a public utility and basically have a right to do whatever they want to do, and so the burden on the local municipality, the bar is really raised when you're doing review of these items. And Sarpy County and the city of La Vista have been using this firm for quite a while. Any application that comes to them that involves cell tower, they don't turn that to staff. They immediately turn it to the outsourced firm that they've got an agreement for, and then they charge accordingly, which is the next agenda item. And they both have said that they wouldn't do it another way. But beyond that, Mr. Hoynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There have been 7 applications in the last 2 months. There's been a flood of those, and as the mayor alluded to, the thing that precipitated this is the assumption by the applicants that they have by right they can go in our right of way. They're assuming they're a utility, and so there's some legal issues surrounding this, and that they take an inordinate amount of time to process. And so not only this consultant agreement, who has a company, a good reputation with Sarpy and La Vista, but the next item where we actually increase the fees, it becomes a net zero to the city because we charge the fee up front, fairly substantial to that company, to pay the consultant. And so these two items are related, but really short answer to your question, Councilman Stubbe, driven by right-of-ways and the cell phone industry placing towers, getting very bold and coming in and telling us what they're going to do and where they're going to do it.
Okay, so I have two follow-up questions. Thank you. One is that within city code, do we require that providers of wireless service co-locate? And I guess before that's answered, the other question is that does the city have occupation tax or some way? So if we do have a provider wanting to come in and use the right-of-way, I'm assuming that there's some revenue that's coming back to the city related to that.
Mr. Schurzman, can you take the first one?
The way that the code is structured, you have to prove that you can't co-locate before you can build a new tower, and that, I think some of the new technology doesn't fit neatly into our code because of its size. Obviously the code that we have was designed for larger towers, and co-location is an important part of that. A lot of these new facilities are much smaller in scale, and they're less spread out. And so that's, again, where the help of the consultant will help us.
Mr. Stubbe, with regard to your question about occupation tax, with regard to utilities that are going into our right-of-ways, we have a master fee agreement. I'm sorry, not a master fee agreement, a master franchise agreement, or to locate into our right-of-way. We haven't really talked extensively as to whether that is also going to apply in terms of occupation tax with regard to these towers. One of the benefits of going with this consultant is they have offered at no cost to the city. They will do a comprehensive review of our code, as well as our master fee schedule and everything that goes along with this topic. And they will make proposed revisions so that, in other words, revisions that will meet the FCC regulations, and will help them to evaluate various applications. So really all of the applications would go to this consultant, and they would come back to the city with their recommendations. They would ultimately be the city's decisions. But
That answer it. Mr. Ingberg.
To the city administrator's point, I think the thing that's important to reiterate is the fact with this item and F7, it's basically cost neutral to the city because it's offset by them putting money in escrow. So there's really no cost to the city. And actually, an additional benefit, if you consider the amount of time our staff spends now on these issues, could be better used in other areas that directly impact their day-to-day duties and Dan sets forth for them. So cost neutral, and actually brings revenue to us because we make up some lost hours.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. And related item F7, Resolution R160093, a resolution to approve an amendment to the master fee schedule to add wireless tower permit fees. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R160093? Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilwoman Klug. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. It's all the regular agenda items. I don't think any committees met. Public safety met on June 21st, but we'd already talked about that previously. But committees are getting pretty active. Public safety is going to meet again on August 2nd as a follow-up to the noise ordinance that's already being worked on. It was mentioned by Mr. Hoynes, Public Works has a committee meeting on Lincoln Road, 84th to 96th. And the audit committee received an assignment of just the annual audit recommendations. So if you're on those committees, and if you're not aware of the meeting, let us know. Do we have any comments from the floor? So we've got some scouts with us. You guys want to come up and introduce yourselves? Come up to the podium, introduce yourselves, let us know what troop you're with. Maybe what merit badge you're working on.
I am Eric Hansen, and I'm from Troop 464, and I'm working on citizenship in the community.
Thanks.
I'm Justin Hansen. I'm from Troop 464, and I'm working on citizenship in the community.
Where's 464?
It is out in La Vista.
Wonderful, thanks. And if you guys need anything else for badge requirements, a couple of us will hang around afterwards if you need to visit.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Any other comments from the floor? Any council comments? Mr. Gaines.
I just had a quick question. Is there an update on Papillion Bay? Has it reopened or?
It did reopen. It was closed immediately when Papillion Days wrapped up on Sundays. When it closed, started draining it immediately. I think by Monday morning or early Monday, then it was drained. Started the sandblasting and the cleaning, and I think by Wednesday it was starting to fill again. And then so that beat the original schedule, I think, that we were anticipating. And then it took a couple of days for the chemicals to stabilize. It opened first thing Saturday morning, right? And have had no issues. So thank you very much. And for people that are listening, thank you for the patience. And great work by staff on identifying that issue, because that was not an easy thing to identify what was causing that, but it appears that it may has taken care of that. If anybody has any questions on the financial side of that or what we've done with some of the memberships, be sure to reach out, but I know Mr. Hoynes did some updates. Any other council comments? Just a few things from the last couple of weeks. Kind of slow just with the holidays, but I met with John Erickson from the Schools Foundation. They're working through maybe what some of their future plans were, and so we always want to stay close on what those are. Mr. Sturzma, Mr. Hoynes, and I met with some of the members of the Trumbull family. There is now an interest in looking at some potential development on 84th and 370 there. I think the market for a long time saw that land as not being developed and it's just kind of bypassed, but the family does maybe have some interest now. So if you talk to developers or they're aware of them, raise that awareness that there may be the interest in looking at developing that. And then if you're familiar with Major League Baseball and sports and you know the Marlins man, he was in town for the Storm Chasers game, and so went out and gave him an official proclamation. He got a tour of the police station, and he actually gives back quite a bit to the community, so he enjoyed his time here. I think we got some good 5 minutes of press with him in town. The Sumter website, if you remember, that was down for a while. That is back and operational, fully operational. And July, it's still pretty busy. July 8th and 28th, there's concerts, both of those. The 29th, the movie Zootopia is out. And in the middle of all that, the community theater has its community theater run again. And I think it's probably the 9th or 10th of community theater, and it's Joseph and the Amazing Dreamcoat, and that's from the 15th to the 17th, and again the 21st to the 23rd, so there'll be a lot of people through that place. This Thursday at 4:30, Tactical 88's got their ribbon cutting. It's the new building there at Interstate and 370 coming into Papillion, so come out for that. And then August 3rd at 6 p.m. is the neighborhood informational meeting on Lincoln Road. And a letter did go out to the immediate affected neighbors on that for that informational meeting if you want to come out. Then, if you didn't, we'll make sure you do. Then I think the other thing, Ms. Rupiper, Mr. Hoynes, and I had a meeting with some county representatives on Project Raven today and keeping that moving forward. And I know it's a lot of work on Mr. Sturzma's staff, but that's moving forward with that application in. I don't think there are any other updates. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Councilman Glover. Second by Councilman Gaines. Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you.